Good morning. So we're having this great religious debate on social media. So I thought I'd share some of my answers with you and some of my arguments that I've had with people because it might interest you to see what my perspective is. And it's always interesting to see other perspectives when you're in the search for knowledge and wisdom about the Creator and about spiritual matters. So I wanted to tell you some. So I've been arguing a lot of atheists, which is interesting. And because um, I would never unfriend a person for not believing something or you know, and I'm not really. Oh, there was one friend on my Facebook that I was debating about religion. He's an atheist, but it was a nice debate. But then I've also had some debates with guys on like these religious forums, and they're more hostile, which is fine with me. I don't mind a hostile debate. So I would never. I don't. It's not offensive to me that they don't believe in a creator or a spiritual dimension, because it's something that you have to understand yourself, and unless you personally fully understand it, there's no reason to accept something that you don't believe in. And so I would never force someone to believe something that they just simply can't believe in. But the reason why I'm not an atheist isn't because I read the Bible and it changed my mind or something. The reason I'm not an atheist is because rationally, if you just use pure reason, and when I say this to you the first time, if you don't already know this kind of stuff and you're not aware of what I'm talking about, it might not seem rational to you. But the fact of the matter is, there's really no explanation for why the universe appears. Okay, like why is it appearing, and why it continues to appear. Okay. Where is it located exactly? These are questions that you probably haven't contemplated fully. And if you look at some of the theories of other people, whether it's like the Big Bang Theory, I'll tell you why that's such a ridiculous theory. They said, well, the universe was created by a Big Bang. Okay, well the thing is, the universe was created. Okay, but I guess they mean the objects in the space. But where is the space exactly? Like if you said, where's your car? My car is parked on this street next to this fire hydrant, next to this tree, next to this other thing. When you talk about where the universe is located, okay, where is the whole universe, the infinite universe, where is it? Okay, this is a question you should ask yourself. Where is it located? And when you understand where it's located and where it's not located, then it becomes pretty obvious how it's created. But And the answer, I guess I'll just give you the answer to that. The answer to that is that the universe, like your imagination, appears and disappears, and appears and disappears, or a memory can appear and disappear. But the universe is persistently reappearing, and it's a collective dimension of the mind. So it's basically, what I'm trying to say is, you can only experience the universe with other, as a being. You're touching your hand to a table. Well, those are two objects in the universe that you're experiencing with. So that's all part of the universe, and it's existing in a space somewhere. Where is this space existing? It's a dimension of the mind. That's really all it is. That might be too complicated for someone to understand immediately, and but all I can say is, can you see a thought? Have you ever seen a thought? Okay, you see a thought, you think something, and you see a representation of it as the mind. The mind is the space. The mind is the matter. The mind is the energy. The mind is the energy and emotion in space. That's the mind. It's not like your brains. Your brains are just part of this universe, right? And that would be called the mind. The universe itself is the mind, because the mind isn't a thinking thing. There's something thinking, and the mind is the mechanical representations of those thoughts. Does that make sense? So the universe is a mechanical representation of thought. That'd be a good way to describe it. So it's existing in a dimension of thought. That is why astrotheology was what it translated over into the Bible, gave people a misleading idea about where God is. because God was in space. In astrotheology, God's in space. The stars and the sun and the moon, everything's out in the heavens. That's where God is. So when the Bible was written, and they made the Creator God, they started worshiping the Creator God. Well, where is the Creator God? Well, it started out as just, the king of the pantheon was the one the one they decided to worship was only the king of the pantheon, let's say. But then it became a more nuanced religion where they started to define it in terms of one's behavior, one's righteousness, one's goodness. Like, these were the things that proved whether or not you were following the God. Those things are all within you. You see, all those elements are within you. The creator element's actually within you also, because you as a thinking being are contributing to this collective dimension of the mind, which we call the universe. So let me give you an example. Let's say you're having a dream, and you're dreaming of going to the beach. This is one that happens to me. So I'm going to the beach, and so I'm looking out at the surf, and the surf looks good next to the pier, and you think, okay, so in this dream, you see there's a certain space there. Well, if I kept walking or took a boat and kept going out into the ocean, there'd be more space, and then there'd be more space, and there'd be more space. If I get in a rocket ship and I go out into space, and then there's more space, and there's more. It's like, why is the space infinite? Because it's the mind. It's a dimension of it's a mechanical representation of thought. So it has no end because it's really an illusion, and because it's an illusion, it's infinite. That's how it works. There's no other way for it to exist. Like people think that it just exists, and then it's causing life to occur. That's not possible. How does it come into being? It's a mechanical representation of thought. That is what the universe is. That's why it's infinite, because you're thinking a new space into existence. Collectively, it just goes on and on and on and on. But the important point you have to know is that the Bible was a little misleading because it came out of astrotheology, which said the gods were in the stars. So now, if God, so people thought there was a God in space somewhere. There was some being. Ooh, this is a good one, because this is one of the things that the Muslims, because I also debated some Muslims, and they wanted me to agree that there's one God. Because they're arguing with the Christians all the time about the Trinity. Now, I've tried to explain to people that the Trinity is three ideas about God. It's not three gods, it's just three ideas about God. And it's a little misleading. And the reason why the Christians came up with that was because in Genesis, it talks about, God is referring to himself in the plural, because it came out of Enuma Elish originally. It was originally a polytheistic source that they wrote Genesis out of, but they didn't know that. So now they're saying, so now the Christians are reading this around, the early Christians are reading Genesis, and they're saying, why does it say us? Why does it say we? So they invented the Trinity as the explanation for why it says that in Genesis. Now, those are three ideas about God. They're not three gods. The Muslims would always start the conversations with trying to get you to agree that there's only one God. You agree that there's only one God, right? Well, I'm going to tell you right now that I don't agree that God is a quantity of number one. In fact, that would be a form of idol worship to say God is one. One is a mathematical quantity, which you will find in this universe. God is not part of this universe. God is both zero and also infinity. So it's not a quantity of one. You could say we all have in common this thing called the conscience, which is how we know right from wrong, and we all have in common this source that the world comes out of. But it's not a one. A one is a mathematical quantity in this universe. That alone is too complicated for some people to understand. But maybe you'll understand it. I understand it. You cannot quantify the Creator as being one thing, because it's not a thing. It's a creator of things, so it's really a zero, and also it's infinity, because it's zero, but it's also everything. So it's not one. You could say we're only worshiping the Creator, which in mathematical terms is one thing, but that's a one thing explanation given in this universe for something that is both zero and also infinity. So that's another argument that we went over. Now, there was another one, which was a fellow asked me, it was on a religious debate. He says,
He wanted not just me personally, but he posted, he wanted people who were believed in God to give their explanation for why they believed in God without referring to the Bible, but just give their explanation for what causes them to believe in God. So I gave a real simple one, which was, see, the thing is, I don't believe in God necessarily so much as I guess it's a belief or just a feeling or a knowingness that God dwells within me. Like, there's this power that I have within me, and you have it in you. If you can recognize that this is within you, it's right there. See, God is a tangible thing. It's not just like a belief system or a faith or something. Not for me. It's a tangible thing. I've located what the thing that they were talking about in the Bible is supposed to be, really, ultimately. What does it all boil down to? And you have that thing inside you. That's the whole point. You have that within your soul. It's part of your soul. So before I go into that, he was asking for an explanation for why people believe in God without referring to the Bible. So I said, God dwells within me. That's why I believe in it, because it dwells within me. I'm experiencing it, you see? And he wanted proof. He said, well, prove that God dwells within you. The answer I gave was righteousness. And so at first, an atheist wouldn't know why that would be. But see, here's the thing. I'd have to teach him the entire Bible in order for him to know why righteousness indicates that God dwells within you. Because that's the teaching of the Bible, ultimately, from the Old Testament into the teachings of Jesus Christ, is that Jesus Christ, how do you know, a good tree produces good fruit, an evil tree produces evil fruit, right? It's righteousness. The Beatitudes, blessed are those who seek, I don't know, I'm not going to say them exactly, but blessed are those who want justice and righteousness and do good. And, you're a light of the world, don't extinguish your light, but be a light unto the world. That light of life that Jesus Christ is talking about, that goodness, that virtue, that righteousness, that is the thing within you which determines whether or not you're following the religion. If you're following God, actually, not the religion. The religion can be the practices which we actually got from the universe itself. The lunisolar calendar is the religion. But whether or not you're truly following the Creator would be through one's conscience. The word conscience, it's to know with. It's an inner feeling of right and wrong, which is your direct link to the Creator of the universe and the wisdom of the Creator of the universe. You literally, in order to commit an act of some kind of criminal act or a perverse act or something, you actually have to willfully separate yourself from your conscience and from God in order to do something that you know is wrong. That would be like separating yourself from God. That would be like denying God. You can get on all kinds of symbolism about it in the Bible, but ultimately, that's what it is. You have to willfully reject what you know is true, what you know is right, what you know is the righteous, virtuous thing to do in order to commit an act of crime. People do it all the time, whether it's for taking money or bribes or you see all this stuff we have going on in society, which I can't talk about on YouTube because YouTube gets mad if you talk about government crimes. But let's just say people do things that they shouldn't. They have to willfully go against their conscience. So that was another big one. So this is one I've gotten into a lot. Is people ask me, well, how do you know God is this and that, or does God talk to you? Does He give you a little text message? Like atheists will say little snarky comments. So you talk to God, huh? Your invisible friend? No, it's the conscience. And so that's what I'm saying. It's the conscience. Everyone has a conscience. So in the Bible, when they wrote these stories, they're writing the conscience into the story as being the thing. This is the thing which determines whether or not you're following God. Because you got to understand the story of Noah. Okay, Noah didn't have a book. He had his conscience. That was the thing. When they say Noah walked with God, they're saying Noah followed his conscience. That's what that means. It's not like there was another person around called God and they walked around together. That's a metaphor. That's symbolic. So anyway, hopefully you understand that. Some people, they just don't understand that. But what I tried to do when I read the Bible, because what I realized first of all, and this is okay. So here's how here's how this works. When I'm talking to atheists, they say none of the old gods were real, and none of the Bible gods were real, and it's all fake, and it's all made up, and it's all fiction. Okay, well that's not true, and I'll tell you why. All the old gods were real. First of all, the sun is real, the moon is real, water is real, the wind is real, agriculture is real. Like everything that. What I'm trying to say is they wrote fictional stories about real things. So at the bottom of the story, whether it's the story of Osiris and Horus and all these gods of Egypt, or all the gods of Canaan, or all the gods of Mesopotamia, at the bottom of that fictional story of Ishtar and all these different things is a real object. It's a real thing that you find in the universe called, in the case of Ishtar, it's Venus. In the case of Utu, it's the sun. In the case of Sen or Nana, it's the moon. Or in case of Horus, it's the sun. In the case of Osiris, it's the moon cycle. These are all real things that occur in the universe. They're not just imaginary things. They're fictional stories about real things. Okay, fictional stories about real things. That's the whole point. And so when you read the Bible, because the religion's changed, what is the real thing that they've created a fictional story around in some cases in the Bible? For instance, okay, well, I don't want to get off. I'm going to just stick on. What is the real thing that they just like in the old books, they had the moon. They made a story about it. The fictional story was about a real object, or the sun. Okay, so in the Bible, what's the real thing in there that you can put your finger on and say that thing is real? That thing is real. I experience it every day. Well, that's your conscience. That's your knowledge of good and evil. That's your knowledge of righteous behavior and unrighteous behavior, which means to do right and not to do wrong. That's called being virtuous. Those qualities are not physical, but they're very real, and they're within you all the time. It's part of your makeup as a spiritual being. This is the key. Right? Because this is the key to a better world, a better civilization, a perfect civilization. Because if you could follow your conscience perfectly and not deviate, you would have a utopian world if everyone did that, right? That's really the key. That's the gateway to the true God, is through your conscience. Because that is the divine truth, the divine wisdom lies within your conscience. So, whoever wrote the Bible wrote that into the Bible. But then they also made it a little misleading because it's about the gods in space, and he's got this army, and there's a lot of stuff in there that misleads you away from knowing that. So what I did when I read the Bible is just like in the old books. There's a real thing that they're talking about, which the fictional story's pointing to. Same with the both the Old Testament and the New Testament. There is a real thing within you called your conscience that the book is pointing to, as that if you just like stripped away all the chaff, there's this one thing that they're teaching you about, which is about your conscience, which is about doing right. Now it's not a perfect book, because there's a lot of man's own, because all these books were written by men, so it's not going to be perfect, and they'll tell you that the way to really be good and to really follow God is to do this or to do that or to do that, or do things that are kind of stupid or doesn't make sense, or So those things are unnecessary. Like let's take circumcision as an example. That was a ritual of Egypt, likely that the Pharaoh would order his men to cut that off, so that when you're in battle, you know who the enemy is and who it isn't. Because he's sending guys from Egypt of Canaanite descent into Canaan to go patrol that area. So how is he going to know if you're the same race as these other people generally, you kind of all look the same, you're all kind of like same looking types of people, right? How do you know who works for Pharaoh and who works for, these other tribes out there? Well, you can look at it's pretty obvious if that thing's cut off that you have been to Egypt. Okay, so that might be how that ritual started. So that's not something that has to be perpetuated, right? But in the Bible, it's real important that this is done because it's part of a culture. So you have to be able to separate
what would be the teachings of man or the culture of a certain people at a certain time versus this other thing, which is totally timeless, which is one's conscience and one's conscience. So anyway, these are some of the arguments that I've been having with people, and yeah, so that's about it. I don't know if I have anything else to say about it right now. I think I said it all. Okay, well that was about 20 minutes. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it gave you some, different look on things. And there's a lot to this subject, but there isn't. Like there's a lot of information about all these other religions, but if you boil it down to the thing that the fictional story is talking about, you'll find that there is something there. There's a real thing there. Whether it be the conscience of man that tells you what virtue is, it's like within you. Or if you're talking about the creation of the world, you're still in the same realm as the mind. That's why the creator and how one behaves are both really... Because you could say, well, there's just a creator in this. How your conscience is like a separate thing. Well, they both stem from the mind. That's why they're both. It's the God of the creation of the universe and of the human soul through one's conscience. Because the universe, like I told you, and I'm not just telling you this so that you're like, oh, he said this and that must be right or wrong or whatever. No, you got to contemplate this. There's no possible way for the universe to appear other than as a mechanical representation of thought. And it just persists because everybody is like basically manifesting this idea that this thing continues to exist. Boom. It just marches and just changes. Boom, 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 boom. It is persisting through time, right? We collectively, all beings, anyone who sees it continues to it continues to appear for them, and just like, oh God, I don't know. It's hard. It's easy for me to understand, but sometimes hard to explain. Let's just say it's a dimension of the mind. It's a mechanical representation of thought. Collectively, you have your own thoughts, which you can see your own thoughts. Okay, you can see your own thoughts. Well, you can see other people's thoughts that are commonly agreed on, and that's called the universe. The commonly agreed upon one, right? Those are the common. That's why if someone runs up to you and says there's a purple zebra attacking a dinosaur in the backyard, you'd be like, that's not happening. I went out, I didn't see that out there. But that person thought he's obviously insane, right? Because he's seeing something that is his imagination. It's not part of the collective. So the universe is a collective mechanical representation of thought. And then because it's coming from, that's the mind. Well, that comes from the mind comes from the thought thinker, and you're a thought thinker. We call that a soul or whatever you call it in your language. And that, of course, is also the realm of this divine wisdom of the conscience. That's where the conscience is. So all this, both the creator God and the God of the human soul are the same thing. It comes from the same origin, which is the spiritual dimension. So they would be the same thing. They would be the same God. So in the Bible religion, it started out, we're just going to worship the Creator, and then prophets came along and philosophers like Isaiah and others, and they tried to further define what this God is. And of course, Isaiah, it's pretty clear in the terms of Isaiah that this is a God of justice, righteousness, doing what is right, not doing what is wrong. So you have this idea about society and people and your own behavior and how you should be. And of course, that comes from one's conscience. So that's all I have to say about that. Have a good day.